The Toronto Maple Leafs have fleeced the NHL as they have finalized their roster for opening night, which means they have made more moves. And in what has been a wild 48 hours, Brad Treliving has pulled off an absolute masterclass. We'll break that down, discuss the more moves that happen, as well as break down what this means going forward for the Toronto Maple Leafs, as we are now 48 hours away from opening night against the Montreal Canadiens. Stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we get into it, if you're a part of the 70 or so percent that aren't subscribed to the channel, you're going to want to make sure to hit that subscribe button. We got you up to date with all the latest Leafs news. This is the place to be, and we're on the road to 14,000 subscribers. And Darius, we have a lot to go over today. The Leafs have finalized their roster. They've made more moves, and what that means is that we finally have some semblance of what the opening night lineup is going to look like, what the opening night roster is going to look like, and is at this point. And we made a video a couple hours ago on the Easton Cowan thing and how he's not going to be playing with the Leafs, but now we know what moves happened corresponding Max Pacioretty being officially named to the roster. So you can see this here, and let's just start with this. Brad Treliving, a bit of a masterclass by him on a few fronts. The Leafs forever opening roster is $4.34 million over cap with 23 players. Now, this means the moves that were made. Cal Yarncroc is officially on the LTIR along with Hakanpää and Mermis. This means that Cal is not going to be able to play alongside Hakanpää, of course, until after 10 games. So they're going to have until November, I believe it's November, that he's going to be able to play. And then on the IR, you have Connor Dewar, you have Fraser Minton. They are $1 within the optimal LTIR capture. So Brad Treliving managed to pull something off that is very impressive and rarely happens. He's within $1 of the cap while also having a ton of internal competition throughout the entirety of training camp, which let guys really show out, specifically Steven Lawrence. Darius, what a masterclass by Brad Treliving, and what a wild, past 48 hours for sure, but really since training camp opened up a few weeks ago, it's been a wild time, and now everything is finalized, and now it's time to gear up for opening night against the Canadiens.
This is pretty wild for sure because, when you look at they have $1 in salary cap space, which is insane if you really think about it, because you're dealing with hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars, and they have $1 of cap space. It's crazy, but they got under it for sure, and they got a little bit lucky. Obviously, some players unlucky because they're going on IR and LTIR for sure, but they got a little bit lucky with Fraser Minton, for example, and not having to make a trade and being able to do some of these moves instead, right? But with these moves being made today, if you look at it, at November 1st, they're going to have to make a trade. Somebody is going to get moved at some point here. They just bought themselves a little bit of time where now they can have Liljegren still maybe come into the lineup. And if he finds his footing, then maybe he stays with the team and they do something else. So they bought themselves about a month's time here before they have to make another move. But pretty handy work here from Brad Treliving and company, because obviously having that $1 cap space is pretty insane. And they do have some extras too, which is a welcome surprise from the last couple seasons, because, the last couple years they've had maybe one extra, or they would have to call somebody up from the Marlies if there was an injury. And this year they have a couple guys like Bobby McMann is not even factoring into the opening night lineup right now. He's on the outside looking in, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, pretty wild cap shenanigans going on here, if you want to call it that. And they bought themselves about a month here as well.
Yeah, that's the wild thing. And you mentioned it. They got lucky in the sense that, not lucky. It's a weird luck here, because obviously they don't want Cal Yarncroc to be injured. He's a very good player. But in terms of how they look now, they get to test out and really try out Timothy Liljegren versus Connor Timmins in Craig Bruba's system, basically, is what they get to do. See who plays better, and probably whoever plays worse is going to be the one that gets shipped out. And in all likelihood, according to multiple reports, it is going to be Connor Timmins that starts on opening night, not Timothy Liljegren, along with Bobby McMann as well. And again, you look at the cap hit here. Within $1 is absurd. It's absurd when you're, like you say, we're dealing with so much money now. You look at the blue line here with Riley Tanev, EOEL, Jake McCabe, who's going to be healthy for opening night, Benoit, and Connor Timmins. That is a projected opening night blue line there. And Timothy Liljegren's on the outside looking in along with Phil Myers. But Timothy Liljegren there, he just signed a $6 million deal over 2 years. Not 6 years. 2 years, $6 million. And then a couple months later, he's not even factored into the opening night lineup. And Connor Timmins is someone who at the start of the offseason, none of us projected that he was going to factor in at all. And when you're looking at the rest of the lineup here, Darius, I'm liking the way it looks. Obviously, Nyes, Matthews, Marner, Domi, Tavares, Nylander, Pacioretty, Holmberg, Robertson, Lawrence, Kemp, and Reeves. Now, it's not the most optimal, at least in my opinion. You have Tavares in the second line still. They're obviously going to rock with Nylander on the wing. You have Pontus, who I'm a big fan of, the third line there, which is interesting. You have Robertson on the third line as well, and these are the lineups, in case you were wondering, that practiced today and is projected to be the opening night lineup there. But what are your thoughts on the opening night lineup now that every single thing is finalized with their $1 under the cap roster here?
Like you said, not optimal in terms of lineup and the actual lines, right? This is not something I would do for opening night, but they're still playing with things. And obviously, McMahon hasn't really earned a spot yet, at least in the eyes of Craig Berube, and he's made that clear today. So he's going to have to still earn that spot. And I mean, it's a long season. We're going to see Bobby McMahon sooner rather than later for sure. And they have a couple back-to-backs coming up this month as well. So we're going to see him. But yeah, like you said, not optimal in terms of lines. But I mean, when you look at the forward group as a whole and what we thought it was going to look like during the summer, we thought it was going to be significantly weaker than last year. And coming into this year, it's a different style. And I think my mindset's changed a little bit on it, that it doesn't have to be full offense. But, you know, when you have someone like Nick Robertson playing as well as he is right now and he's healthy, he's going to add a couple goals for you this year, right? Like you lost Bertuzzi, but a guy like Robertson can kind of fill that gap, I think, because of what we've seen so far in the preseason. And yes, it's preseason, but we know what he can do at the NHL level, right? So in terms of offense, that's all good, right? Obviously, Nylander is going to score. Matthews is going to score. I think Mitch Marner is going to have a fantastic year, probably a career year because it's a contract year. But, you know, the rest of the lineup and how that's filled out, I'm really happy with, and who they added, like Lawrence. And obviously, I think Pacioretty does have some use. I've really changed my mind on that thanks to you, Nick, through the summer and the preseason here. So, you know, I think that they look great. They have great depth on the back end as well. I know we're talking about forwards, but what they've done to the defense is great as well. And like I said, they've been able to keep a couple guys as extras here where they haven't been able to do that in previous years, which is pretty handy work there with the cap, because again, they have a bunch of guys making over $10 million. So some handy work there. And I'm liking the way the roster has shaped up here for opening night. Just a couple surprises, but they bought themselves some time, and some guys can probably work their way back into the lineup.
Yeah, they're looking very deep. And again, you have Yarncroc, Dewar, and Hakanpää, who are guys who are on the IR now. And in November, you can make a case that all three of those guys could factor into the lineup, especially Connor Dewar. But it kind of depends on how Steven Lawrence does, as well as even David Kampf. Like, no one's job is safe. Pontus Holmberg, you can even argue. At this point, no one's job is safe. So it's going to be interesting. And something else to note, you briefly mentioned it. They start the season off this Wednesday and Thursday with a back-to-back. So there's a very real world where Liljegren gets in on one of those games and replaces Connor Timmins unless he has a crazy good game. And they have so much depth now, whether it's Bobby McMahon, you could see him factor into the second game as well. Even if they lose the first one, then maybe they make a change and they put in Bobby McMahon or Liljegren. With the amount of back-to-backs that are had over the first couple months for the Leaf season, even the first month, having this depth is very important for them. And again, so the roster includes Connor Dewar, Fraser Minton on the IR, Cal Yarncroc, Hakanpää, and Dakota Mermis on the LTIR. And of course, as well, Matt Murray has cleared waivers, as well as Marshall Rafai has also cleared waivers, which means they're sent down to the AHL now. And Matt Murray seems like he's going to factor in. And feel free to pause if you want to go over the entire Maple Leafs opening night roster here, which is something that is very interesting as well. There's any final surprises or thoughts as we really prepare now for the regular season, because it's going to happen very soon. And before I ask you that, I do want to throw regarding some other moves they've made. So the Maple Leafs announced staff updates. The Toronto Maple Leafs general manager Brad Living announced today that Jason Taylor has been hired as a pro scout, Jared Smith has been hired as an amateur scout, and Scott Carter have been added and hired as part-time pro and amateur scout. And former Maple Leafs defenseman Jake Muzzin has moved into player development. So just a few other notes there in case any of you were interested. Darius, any final thoughts on any of the moves as, again, we prepare for the regular season to start?
I'm not surprised by a lot of them because obviously the injuries, we can't be surprised by that. But I think the Leafs got real lucky, if you want to call it that, in terms of, you know, who got injured in the preseason, and obviously Yarncroc, and they were able to do this instead of making a move. And now they give guys like Liljegren an opportunity, and McMahon an opportunity to earn their spots back in about a month, because they're going to have to make a trade here. Something's going to happen in a month with a bunch of these guys coming back for sure. So yeah, I think a lot of guys are lucky that the Leafs are in this position here where they're going to have the opportunity to earn their spots back. And nice to see Jake Muzzin sticking with the organization as well.
Yeah, very interesting. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on all this. We are going to keep you up to date with all the latest news, because a lot of it's going to be coming, as we are now less than 48 hours away, or about 48 hours away from opening night against the Montreal Canadiens. So make sure to hit the subscribe button. We'll see you guys soon.